Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome back to Housing and Settlement. Before we continue today onto today's session, I would like to convey a very happy Eid Mubarak to everyone who celebrates the holidays, and mohon maaf lahir dan batin to everyone. Um, for any wrongdoings or and anything that and maybe and for the times that I have misspoken. Um, Please do mark your attendance. Use by either scanning the QR code or using the or by entering 605281. And today we will have a today we're having a group presentation on housing management. And seeing that most of us are here, I assume that the group is present ready to um, ready to begin their presentation. Hang on, I'll just have to make sure that the share screen settings have been activated. That's activated, and and to the presenting group, um, whenever you're ready, you can begin your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Pananda and friends. We are from Group 6, and we're going to talk about uh, house and settlement management and also the implementation. And this group consists of Dio Aryaska, which is number 7, and me, Yeager, number 15.
Yeah, for the first is housing and settlement strategy and management, for the suitability of settlement with the surrounding environment. For the definition, the National Housing and Settlement Policy and Strategy, or KSNPP, is used as guideline for preparing arrangement and plans for housing and settlements implementation both at the central and regional levels according to local condition and potential. For the purpose, the national housing and settlements policies and strategies as referred to above are aimed at supporting the achievement of the housing and settlement sector development target through increasing effective integration in the preparation of plan, program, and implementation of activities as a whole. Form of policy and national strategy of housing and residence and settlement. The formulation of policies and strategies is very structural, so that nationally it is expected to be applicable in sufficient time span, be able to accommodate a wide variety of contextual in each region, and can facilitate a systemic explanation at a more operational level by development actor in the housing and settlement sector, whether in the form of plan, program, project, or activities. Policy and national strategy of housing and residence. The, the formulate national policy consists of three main structures, namely those related to institution, meeting housing needs, and achieving settlement quality. Meanwhile, strategies to implement policy are formulated primarily to achieve significant strategic substance from each policy.
And then this the issues and the problem of housing and settlement. Next. So the first issues uh, is discrepancy issues arises because of limited opportunities to obtain services and opportunities to play a role in housing and settlement sector, especially for the poor and low-income groups. The second issue is environmental issues. The scarcity of basic infrastructure and facilities, the inability to maintain and improve the existing residential environment, and the low quality of the settlement, both functionally, environmentally, and visually, in the form of the environment. And then the third is development management issues, and it is caused by the limited government's performance at all levels, resulting in the weak implementation of established policy, inconsistencies in land use for housing and settlement, and emergence of negative impact on the environment. And the next is the problem of housing and settlement. The first problem is inefficient housing and settlement management system, and inefficient service and access to land right for housing, especially for the poor and the low-income groups. And the second problem is lack of fulfillment of adequate and affordable housing needs. The high demand for adequate and affordable housing has yet to balance due to the limited capacity of provision by the community, business world, and governments. And third is the decline in quality of settlement environment. And the most of the quality of housing and settlement is still limited and doesn't meet the standards as a sustainable settlement area. And this is the National Housing National Strategy, which is based on the National Housing and Settlement Policy Strategy, or we call it Kebijakan dan Strategi Nasional Perumahan dan Pemukiman atau KNSNPP. The first strategy is reforming the regulation, developing laws and regulation, and strengthening institution in the housing and settlement sector, as well as facilitating the implementation of transparent and participatory planning, spatial planning of residential areas. And the second strategy is fulfillment of houses needs. Fulfilling the needs of decent and affordable housing with an emphasis on the poor and low income people. And then the third is develop a healthy environment. And we will explain more later. Developing health, safe, and harmonious and sustainable settlement to support the development of identity, independence, and community productivity.
So the next is settlement quality policy. For this, for the main topic is creating healthy, safe, harmonious, and sustainable settlement to support the development of identity, independence, and community productivity. The The policy is the quality of settlement in urban and rural area is shaped in such a way that it can help overcome urbanization, promote regional growth, and support the good interconnection of urban and rural area. For this, social, social, economic, and environmental development as a whole will be able to take place more effectively if it's accommodated in a healthy settlement, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, which is safe in terms of safety and public interest, which is harmonious as a complete residential unit, and the quality of its relationship with other regional functions, as well as sustainable from a social, economic, and environmental perspective as a whole. For the settlement quality strategy, it's the realization of healthy, safe, harmonious, and sustainable residential environmental condition. For the first is improvement of the quality of the settlement environment with the priority of for slum area in the urban area and coastal or fishing area. It consists of structuring and rehabilitating slums area, repair of basic infrastructure and facilities for settlement, and development of rental houses, including rent simple flats or rusunawa in urban area. For the second is development of the provision of basic infrastructure and facilities for settlement that consists of development of a ready-to-build area or kasiba and a ready-to-build environment or lisiba. And the next is development of a standalone ready-to-build environment. The last is application of residential environmental arrangement that consists of institutionalization of development plan and development of housing and settlement in the region or FP4D. And next is preservation of protected building and traditional residential environment. C is revitalization of strategic residential environment and the development of settlement, environmental management, and strategic strengthening of minimum service standard for residential environment. Uh, for the for the next is improvement of the quality of settlement environment. That effort to improve quality are based on the concept of Hidayah, namely improving the environment, housing, and utilization of environmental infrastructure and facilities in a contextual manner and can accommodate the needs of community social system development and empowerment of the local economy of the community. And the second, uh, but development of infrastructure and facilities for settlement. The Kosiba and Lisiba are intended to develop large-scale residential area in a planned manner as a part of the area, especially in urban area. In the development of Kasiba and Lisiba and their relation to land use management, it is also necessary to consider the development of a land bank to better control land price. And the last is about application of residential environment arrangement that in the framework of developing settlement environmental arrangement and strengthening minimum service standard for housing and settlement, it must also be considered the importance of preventing change in the land use and other matters such as the potential for natural disaster in the area. Since the data needed in determining the suitability of settlement with the environment, the primary data need first is landform, second is the slope of the slope, third is flood vulnerability, four is surface erosion, five is landslide hazard, six is surface drainage, seven level of rock weathering, eight is home strain, nine is soil using capacity, 10 is water depth, and last is soil texture. For the secondary data, need a topographic map, administrative map, geological map, land use map, rainfall, temperature, soil geology, and demographic data. And for the study case, we are with the implementation of the House Office strategy for slum settlement in Semanggi, Surakarta. For general description, one of the slum area in the city of Surakarta is, is the Semanggi area. Based on the decree of the mayor of Surakarta number 430.21 slash 38.3 slash 1 slash 2009 16. The Semanggi area is the first priority in the structuring slum settlement because the Semanggi area is the area with the highest area of slum area in Surakarta city. In addition, the Semanggi area is located in a strategic city function because there is an area drainage, namely Bengawan Solo, and the railroad tracks pass through. The Semanggi area is also an economic area with a high population density. For the background, the basis for choosing this location is that the city of Surakarta is a city or district that has the highest population density in Central Java in 2016, namely 11,677.74 people per kilometer square. This has resulted in various impacts on the environment, one of which is the existence of slum area. The area of slum settlement in the city of Surakarta in 2016 was 359.55 hectares from the total area of the cities of Surakarta of 4,404 hectares. This means that 8.70% of the area in the city of Surakarta is a slum area, where this figure is among the highest in Central Java.
And then this is the problem in Semanggi. As you can see from the data, there are many slum area. If we look at the left data, and Pasar Kliwon has 30 hectare slum area. I mean Semanggi has 30 hectare area, and Sangkra has 28 slum area, and then Kedung Lumbu has 4 hectare slum area, and for the Jebres district, for the Sewu sub district, it has 4 slum area, 4 hectare slum area, and then Gandekan has 7 hectare slum area. And for the population itself, Semanggi, total population Semanggi is 33,700, and but there who live in slum area is 25,700. And then for the building itself, total building in this area is 8,000, and for the number of uninhabitable houses is 1,400. And then the government will apply the strategy program. For the strategy itself, the first one is accelerating of fulfillment of unfit for housing, and then second strategy is establishment of slum-free area. And then for the program, the first is housing development program, including improving the quality of livable for living, and then the construction of simple, healthy home facilities and infrastructure. And the second program is drainage channel development program, including the maintenance of drainage channel. And this is the activities program that implemented by government in Semanggi. The first one is improving the quality of an habitable house. This is in form of provide assistance to people live in uninhabitable houses, and this is the purpose. The purpose is because there many people live in uninhabitable houses. And for the second is the construction of simple houses, facilities, and healthy infrastructure. This is in form of construction of simple healthy home facilities and infrastructure in form of paving and making channel from grills in Semanggi district, as you can see from the picture. And then the third program is drainage channel maintenance. And this maintenance is in the form of improving drainage channel or renovated for the better. And for the conclusion, is broadly speaking, it has implemented well and expected our plan And the strategy for structuring slum settlement in this Mangi area is based on the strategic plan or RENSRA of the Housing, Settlement, and Land Affairs Office of Surakarta City. The strategies are strengthening the fulfillment of unhabitable housing and the realization of a slum-free area. And the program applied, namely Housing Development Program, which include activities to improve the quality of unfit for living, and then activities for building facilities and infrastructure for simple, healthy houses. And the second program is the Nest Drain Development Program, which include drainage drain maintenance activity. And you can see from the picture, from the left side is the before, and the right side is the after. So the government really developed this Mangi area. Next, and it is our references, and that's all from us. Is there any question?
Thank you, guys. I'd like to give the opportunity to the class, to the rest of the class, if they have any comments or questions with regards to the presentation. Look, yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments, please you can unmute yourselves directly, or you can raise your hands before. Yes, Putri.
Thank you for the presentation. It is very interesting. I just want to ask regarding of the inefficient housing and settlement management systems. Could you give us some kind of example in what kind of forms the inefficient management systems in Indonesia?
Thank you, Putri. I think that's a very, very good question. They did mention, the group did mention that one of the issues in housing and settlement strategies and management is the inefficiency, the management inefficiency. Yeah, so if you guys could elaborate further or explain further in what ways or how is this housing management inefficient? Thank you. You boys have an answer in mind already, or are you still trying to work it out?
Still finding, sir.
Okay.
And in my opinion, there are several reasons or example. The first one is like lack of coordination regarding the distribution of the authority and of course the decision makers. And then the second, I think is funding plan. Funding planning is inconsistent with the implementation needs. And the third is the inadequate capacity of minister or institution in provision of infrastructure, especially those carried out under the public-private partnership scheme. And then the slow process of drafting regulation and the existence of overlapping regulation for the investment. Is that answering your question or not?
Yes, it already answers the questions. Thank you so much for the answer.
Thank you, guys, and thank you again, Putri, for that question. Does anybody else have any comments or questions that they would like to forward to the presenting group? Well, while we wait, I think managerial inefficiency is a recurring issue, not only in housing and settlement, but also in other aspects of planning in general, other aspects of planning and development in general. Um, most of the times, these inefficiencies are caused by what Yegar has mentioned. In a broader sense, lack of coordination between actors is usually caused because of unclear roles. Unclear roles of the various actors involved or the various stakeholders involved. For example, if we talk about informal settlement strategies, then what is the role of, say, the central government in this issue, and then what is the roles what are the roles of the regional and or the urban authorities that are directly impacted by sprawling informal settlements, for example. And then what are the roles of the civil society or communities and the non-government organizations that represent them, and so on and so forth. So if we can clearly define what each and every actor's roles are, I'm sure the issue of lack of coordination between actors will can be eliminated, if not at least can be minimized. In relation to the clarity of roles or lack thereof, there is a tendency of overlaps between one policy and the other. I can't really give you an example in this framework, but reflecting on my own personal and professional experiences, is that sometimes not all the time, but sometimes, and maybe most of the times, uh, between one level and the next levels of higher of governmental hierarchy, or they usually have this sort of overlap. Now, a slight overlap between policy frameworks is, in my opinion, is still healthy, but if there are too many overlapping programs, too many overlapping policies, then um, that creates a redundancy and thus creating this inefficiency, and if and and the clarity of roles, or the lack thereof, then compounds this issue even further. With institutional capacities, capacity of the ministries, ministerial capacity, or the capacity of the urban authorities, the regional authorities, and I think that it's a common issue with developing countries, and that's one of the reasons why there are a lot of we receive a lot of international aid um, for uh, for housing and settlement, especially slum upgradings, and then we also have. I think there's another program or another project that goes hand in hand with the KSNPP. It's called the Neighborhood Upgrading Shelter Sector Project, or the NUSPP, which was funded by the ADB, and the the NUSPP. Sorry, the NUSPP focuses on shelter design. So tackling the issue of uninhabitable houses, or RTLH. And oh, by the way, me talking. If any of you have any questions or any comments while I talk, please just raise your hand or unmute your mic and say, "Excuse me, I've got something to say." Don't let my talking keep you from delivering your questions or comments, please. So, institutional capacities can be overcome by or through international aid. And with regards to slow drafting of regulations and policies, I guess I think in the last decade or so, we have tried. The government has tried to have cut through a lot of red tape. So and try to make things a bit more efficient for to deliver policies and regulations. But yeah, I think we still have a few more. I think we still have a few more years to come until we can find the perfect balance of this of regulation delivery speed, so to say. Okay, that's all the comments that I have for now. Does anyone have any anyone else have any comments? Maybe I said something that might have sparked or piqued your interest.
Sir,
Mm-hmm.
I have some comment regarding of your statement earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You said that the government overlap of their roles between each other. So I'm just wondering, do the government doesn't like coordinate with each other? I mean, why does the overlap occurs itself?
Okay. So the overlap of the policy overlap and the clarity of roles. So policy and roles um, go should go hand in hand. If you don't define, if you can't clearly define what each and every actor's roles are, and in this case, we're talking about their roles in housing and settlement. Um, but if you can't clearly define, okay, the provincial government would provide so and so, they would they would provide so and so in terms of financial or technical in terms of financial or technical resources, and then the urban authorities would pick up where the provincial government left off. So if you have that clearly defined role, for example, our class. In our class, there are two distinct roles. At least there are at least two distinct roles. Me as a teacher, you as a student. And if we can replicate that teacher student relationship, so to say, and scale it up to the governmental levels or so, um, with the authorities, and clearly define each and every actor's roles, then policy overlaps and whatnot would be minimized. Um, I have an example of a recent. There's a recent. Wait, let me just scroll through my notes. I think the last time I spoke with the provincial with the provincial government of East Java was when we were talking about. No, that's not it. Here it is. When we were talking about. We're talking about infrastructure development framework, and one of the issues that the government representatives brought up was, whenever we sorry, when they one of the issues they brought up was with regards to maintenance of facilities. So there is a road and there is a road and a bridge somewhere in rural East Java. I forgot which. I forgot where. But this is a typical scenario. And then what happened was the road and the bridge were damaged and in need of maintenance. And the issue here is that the road and the bridge are provincial roads. They're provincial government property. So the provincial government should pay for the maintenance and the upkeep of the road and the bridge. However, they decided no, because the way they translated their policies was that once we're done construction, and after a certain period of time, then the road and the bridge become a then the urban or the regional government, pemerintah kabupaten, pemerintah kota, they should be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the road and bridge. And so the urban government were citing another policy that said that no, you should do it. And so that's the sort of overlap and the sort of tension and the sort of miscoordination that I was that I meant. Funnily enough, this sort of overlap only appears when there is an issue of maintenance, or when there's an issue of say, for example, slum upgrading or whatnot. Usually, what makes a program or what delays a program or a development program or any kind of construction, what delays it is this sort of tension and this sort of friction between one government body and the other. And we're not, and this is just the case of the provincial and the urban governments that are having differences. In the context of housing and settlement, we have more actors than just regional government, urban government. We also have other actors that surround this housing and settlement issue, and this sort of situation creates a lot more tension, creates a lot more friction, thus creating more and more inefficiencies. So coming back to overlapping and clarity of roles, we should ideally agree at the beginning of any kind of development projects or any kind of development initiative, for that matter, what your roles are. I guess other than clarity or legal issues, putting role clarity and legal issues aside, I think there's still a tendency of what is known here as institutional arrogance or institutional greed. They want to take credit for some things, but they would try to wash their hands of other issues. They would rather point their finger somewhere else. And this is something that we've been working on to resolving so far. And from my personal experience, I think at least in the major islands, so Java overall, East Kalimantan, the East Kalimantan government that I've worked with, they're pretty good. They're pretty good with what they're doing, and I think I've also worked with other smaller urban authorities. And these newly expanded regions, wilayah pemekaran, these newly expanded regions, they're usually pretty good with these role clarities and making sure to revise any overlapping policies, because some of these governments, especially with the newly expanding governments and newly expanding regions, they have the privilege or the advantage of starting fresh. So but with other government agencies who have been operating for decades, for decades, and so they usually have they usually have this institutional culture that is already formed and more rigidly set in stone, so to say, and so that makes it even more difficult for them to evolve. Yeah, so I think I've veered a little bit off course with the with the in responding to your policy overlap comment there.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think the case that you just brought up was very interesting because, like, for me, it's quite funny because each party seems like against one each other due to the overlapping policies itself. So I'm quite surprised that this does happen in real case. But thank you again.
No worries. Yeah, it is. It is an issue. It is an issue that we need to address, but we're working. We're working towards it. So, see Amira's hand up.
Uh, Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I want to appreciate the presenters for the complete presentation, and I want to ask to the presenters as well as Pak Prananda maybe. I wonder if there are significant difference between the housing management from government agencies and the private. And the second question is, how do that difference between the private developers and the government complement each other in housing management to overcome the issues that that mentioned in the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ooh, yes, that adds another layer of complexity there. Well, I'd like to give the opportunity to respond. I'd like to give the opportunity to respond to the presenting group first, if they don't mind. How about it, boys?
About the different housing management from the government with the private sector. Uh, from my opinion, the difference is from the policies used, that if the state has been determined and is public in nature, while the private sector depends on the company, even though it is the same based on national policy. And for the uh, second question, that how does private developer and government complement each other in housing management? The government and the private sector complement each other with the existence of cooperation agreement where the government suffer from a lack of financial and human resource. Another advantage is that it can share the risk in housing management, and for the private sector, it is possible to contribute directly to the part of government legally. That's for me.
I want to add about the second questions, and I think the private sector is okay. For the second question, and in my opinion, private sector can provide the investment or the finance for the government itself, and then the private sector could be provide the expert or human resource that government does not have. And this part from me.
Okay, great. Thank you for kicking off the feedback and discussion there, boys. With private developers or the private sector, I think Yegar mentioned they can either be housing providers, or they can collaborate with the government by providing either technical resources or financial resources. So they can be the financiers or share the financial burden with the government. With private developers being a housing provider, I think at least this statement came from a private developer operating in Sumanap. They said, "Oh, we have it quite easy because all we need to do is follow the existing legal framework, and we should be okay." So for them, any changes in policies, any changes in development plans or development programs, then they would just have to adapt. They would just have to adapt their operations to it, because private developers, in a sense, are like individual or separate entities. But being separate or being independent entities does not mean that their role in housing management, housing strategy, and housing provision is any less important. I think every actor in every housing and settlement actor, I think they all have very important roles, because they have equally important roles, because they have different shoes to fill. So I think that would summarize how the private sector complements the government. So in that sense, the government or the authorities provide the operational procedures, or the operational framework or the legal framework for the private actors to act on. So there's kind of like the government sets the stage. The government sets the stage and gives a rough outline of the script, and the private developers are the actors and actresses who act out the script on the stage. So to say, that's I'm sorry if that was a poor analogy, but that's how I see it. You can have a look at there are numerous public-private partnerships case studies available here and there, but yeah. But that's how I like to put it. And again, professionally, during my professionally reflecting on my experience with the Sumanap government, when we had an FGD. We had an FGD between district and sub-district heads, the local authorities, and private developers. And what I gather from there was that the private developers simply said, just give us a just give us a solid framework, just give us a solid framework to work on, and we're good with that. So again, that's coming back to coordination and clarity of roles. So the private developers, the private developers in that case, I think that was back in 2012, 2013. They simply said, they explicitly said, just give us a framework to work with and cut the red tape. That's all they wanted. That's all they wanted. Just cut the red tape. There is a general agreement between the government and private developers. Look, you need to provide so and so. You need to create this many houses for the poor. You need to create this many houses and so on and so forth. So that's a good thing. Their collaboration, the public-private partnerships that is going on, I think not just in Sumeneb, but in Indonesia in general, and in a broader sense than globally. I think public-private partnership programs are awesome because they build the government, and the private sector build on each other's strengths. And I think that we need more of these things. So, do you have any further comments, Amira?
No, sir. Thank you so much for the examples and the informative explanation. I do get your points.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I think I saw someone put their hand up and decided not to. But anyways, I actually have a few questions in mind for the presenting group and for the class in general. If you had if you happen to have any open browser tabs other than Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or gadgets right now, I just you guys talked about policy framework. You talked about the issues, and we did discuss back and forth about issues, housing issues. But I want to know. I would like to know what is the impact of the strategies and programs. What impact do these housing strategies and programs have on the communities? Would you care to comment on that?
So basically, the strategies is to helping the community itself, and for example, is like the government wants to improve of community health, and the other example is like the strategy is to build, it's like to build road, so people need the infrastructure to do their activity. For example, like the road. And I think that's from me.
I want to add also that about the strategy on the slum area, it will be improve the quality of life and make it possible to improve other factors such as an economic and social factor. So that's for me.
Okay, great. The reason I'm asking is that most of the time, when we talk about housing or slum upgrading efforts, the sort of improvement, the sort of improvement that gets highlighted most is physical improvement, such as, oh, they needed roads. Let's build roads. I mean, yeah, sure, or maybe they didn't have proper sanitation, so we provided proper sanitation. So it's these sort of physical infrastructure, these sort of hard infrastructure that we often see. Circulatory network improvements, sanitary improvements, and maybe some up to some extent structural and or building quality improvement to the houses. I mean, physical development, physical construction and infrastructural provision. Now that's good and all, but how do these programs and how do these strategies empower the people, the communities that live in these that live in the slums that needed upgrading? Would anybody like to comment on that? Perhaps while we wait for the presenting group or anybody to comment, I would like to I would like to hear some insights on what's going on, what's going on with regards to housing provision and housing improvement strategies and programs over in the African continent. I think Peter is here. Yes, he is. So, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay,
what did
great.
you just say?
No, this week's topic is about housing strategies and housing management issues. What is it like? What is it like over there in Africa in terms of housing provision and housing strategy, and perhaps even slum upgrading and housing improvement strategies?
Well, I don't know much about the strategies there back home because but basically I guess it's just the same because most of the times, the core, the main thing, like what they do is to make sure that they formulate strategies and policies that's gonna help to structure or make or to formulate institutions, or maybe meeting the housing needs, or to achieve settlement quality. So basically, I think that's it. But if I get more information, I'll share.
Okay, great. But the thing is, I think I think this class, or this internet, or you guys as a whole batch, the 2019 batch, you guys are actually quite lucky because you guys are quite fortunate because you do have an international counterpart in your batch who can provide us with insights and with insights into us. I would say a similar a similar situation because both our countries are developing countries, and I know there are slight differences in cultural context and political atmosphere wise, but all in all, we're both developing countries, and so we can learn a lot from each other doing that. Whereas I think other classes and other batches, they're predominantly they're a predominantly homogeneous batch. So yeah, not as fortunate as you guys who have this diversity in the class. But yeah, it'd be great if you could. It would be great if you could dig up and share with the class some of the case studies that are going on back home, and um, not necessarily reflecting on personal practice or professional experience, but any kind of case study would be awesome. Well, thank you for that, Peter. Does anybody else have any further comments or questions, maybe um, with regards to the impact of housing strategies and housing management efforts? Well, if there are no further questions or comments, then uh, I think Dio and Yegar can end or close today's presentation and discussion. You can conclude. You may conclude your presentation now.
Okay, thank you for the participation, Lucas.
Okay, great. Thank you again. Thank you again, guys, for that for that wonderful for the wonderful presentation. And I kind of like using this. I kind of like using this scenery nowadays. It's a bit less boring than the usual interface. So Yeah, thanks again, guys, for that wonderful presentation of yours, and thank you everybody for participating in the discussion. Your questions and your comments have really livened up the discussion today, and so I think if I if I try to sort of summarize our today's session, then I would say that we've heard about how we've heard about the various strategies and the various managerial approaches that the Indonesian government in general already have already implemented to provide better housing for the general population. And there are still some issues, and there are still some issues, and still some difficulties that we need to overcome, namely in overcoming inefficiencies due to policy framework overlaps and the clarity of roles, and increasing institutional capacities and so forth. And with regards to private sectors or private developers, there have been several public-private partnerships programs and efforts initiated either by the government or initiated by the private sector themselves. We have also received a lot of international aid from the ADB, from the World Bank, to help us with informal settlement upgrading. And usually these informal settlement or housing upgradings that we receive is manifested in a physical improvement of the settlement, either through building quality upgrading or provision of basic infrastructure such as sanitation, potable water, and roads. We do need to investigate a little further on these efforts and strategies impacts on and how they impact community empowerment. But I think overall, from the presentation and from the discussion that we just had, I think we are moving in the right direction so far. Although very incrementally, but I think in terms of housing and settlement and urban regional development in general, I would say evolution is a lot better than revolution. So slowly but surely we will get there. And I guess that is all that I can add to today's presentation and discussion. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. For those of you who joined in late and didn't get to scan the barcode or punch in the attendance code, that's okay. I'll have a look at your records through Classroom and help you mark your attendance myself. Awesome. Next week is not a public holiday, is it? Not that I know of. I think not. So, okay, great. Looking forward to seeing you guys again next week. we will have another present for another presentation and discussion session. Hopefully, it'll go on. Hopefully, it will go on to become as lively as this session that we had today. Thank you guys again. Wishing you all a very nice day today. Rather cloudy where I'm at, but yeah. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next week. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.